Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are discussing Sir Alexander Fleming, written by Patrick Pringle. It's our third hero in book 2, English for second year. Sir Alexander Fleming was a Scottish bacteriologist who discovered penicillin, and he was given the title of Sir for his achievement. In today's lecture we will discuss early difficulties of Sir Alexander Fleming, different jobs he did, aseptic method used for the treatment of wounds, work at research laboratory Boulogne. Fleming worked in Leadenhall Street for 4 years. Then at 20 he received a share in a legacy. It was not large, but enough for him to train for a career with better prospects. His brother Thomas was then in Harley Street. Actually, his brother Thomas was his source of inspiration. And according to Fleming himself, my brother Thomas pushed me into medicine. There were 12 medical schools in London, and Fleming knew nothing about any of them. He chose St. Mary's for no better reason than that he had played water polo against the hospital team. Which school he chose? He chose St. Mary's School. This name should be remembered. For 8 years, Fleming worked in Wright's laboratory. For 8 years, he sought to find a means to aid. To aid mean to help. The leukocytes, we have discussed that leukocytes are white blood cells, and their fight against invading bacteria. Invaders, we have discussed it, that invaders are attackers, those people who are attacking. Invading bacteria, actually those bacteria which attack on the wounds. Then in 1914 he joined the RAMC. RAMC is an acronym, and it is abbreviated form of Royal Army Medical Corps. R stands for Royal, A stands for Army, M stands for Medical, and C stands for Corps. So it is Royal Army Medical Corps, and came to face with one of the main medical problems of the First World War. That was the treatment of infected wounds. What was the biggest problem of First World War? It was the treatment of infected wounds. By 1914, Lister's antiseptic method of surgery had been largely replaced by what we call aseptic method. In 1914, by the end of 1914, Lord Lister's antiseptic method of surgery had been replaced by another method which was known as aseptic method. Instead of chemicals, heat was used to sterilize instruments, clothing, and other operating theatre equipments. The purpose was the same: to prevent the germs from getting into the wound. In peacetime, this was adequate. Adequate mean enough for most surgical causes. But in the treatment of war wounds, prevention was not enough. In nearly every case, the wound was infected before treatment could be begun. Thus, the surgeon's problem was the same as that of a physician treating disease. He had to try to kill the germs without damaging the leukocytes that were already fighting against them. What was the biggest problem of a surgeon? His problem was to kill the germs without damaging the leukocytes. Leukocytes, WBCs, white blood cells that were already fighting against them. There was no solution, and the problem was tremendous. Tremendous means very huge, colossal, very big. For the first time in warfare, high explosives were used extensively, and wounds that were not infected were rare indeed. Tremendous mean very huge, very big. Explosive weapons means explosions, gunpowder, which are used for explosive purposes extensively at a large scale. Extensively means at a large scale. The surgeons were unprepared. Unprepared means not ready. Thanks to the antiseptic and aseptic method, infections in surgical cases had become exception instead of the rule. Now it was the other way about again. We have in the war gone back to all the septic infections of Middle Ages, said the Director General of Army Medical Services. Army Medical, the Director of Army Medical Services says that we have in this war gone back to all the septic. Septic is actually the antonym of aseptic. Infected. Septic mean infected. Aseptic mean disinfected. Medical officers treated infected wounds by the method of they knew with chemical antiseptics. They applied carbolic acid, iodine, and other chemicals to open the wounds in an attempt to destroy as many germs as possible. What were the methods used by the army officers? They used different antiseptics, like they applied carbolic acid, iodine, and other chemicals to open wounds in an attempt to destroy as many germs as possible. They could not destroy all the germs, but brought that if only some were killed, it would be better than none. Now we'll discuss Sir Alexander Fleming's work at Research Laboratory Boulogne. Meanwhile, Fleming, a medical officer himself, was still working with his old chief, Sir Almorth Wright, had been made a colonel in the Army Medical Service and had set up a research laboratory at Boulogne. Colonel. This is not colonel, this is colonel. There, with the help of Fleming, he set to work to tackle the problem of wound infections. At times, some students misspell colonel, which is in officer in army. They spell it as Kernl. Actually, Kernl is the core of meanings, the seed of meanings, the base of meanings in semantics, in in English linguistics, applied linguistics. When we talk about the main source of meanings of English words, that is called kernel. The basic thing, the main idea of the development or formation of a word is called kernel. Actually, colonel, colonel, an officer in army is called colonel. Wright and Fleming discovered that the treatment being used was doing more harm than good. Each the chemical. This is short question asked in the papers. What did Fleming and Mr. Wright discovered? They discovered that the treatment being used was doing more harm than good. Discuss it. Each of the chemical antiseptic was more harmful to the leukocytes than to the germs. And in some cases, the antiseptic actually helped the germs to grow and multiply, and help the germs to grow and multiply. And Wright and Fleming both insisted that method was basically wrong, that the surgeon's aim should be not so much to kill the germs with an outside agent as to help the leukocytes do their natural germs killing work. Experiments were made with different chemicals, and another became fashionable and gave way to the next. And at the end of the war, which had killed about 7 million men, 7 million men were killed in First World War. The problem was still unsolved. Fleming, now 37, went back to St. Mary's and continued research. And in 1922, he discovered an antiseptic, not chemical like carbolic acid, but a natural antiseptic manufactured by the body. His further experiments, his achievements, and his rewards, his appreciations would be discussed in next video. Allah Hafiz.